Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at ComputerAmerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@ComputerAmerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a fantastic day, because today it's actually going to be really, for a lot of our correspondents here on the program, it will be the last show of the year that we have, because obviously December, that's generally what that means. And, we're going to be trying to squeeze some in because we want everyone to, of course, be able to, we want at least everyone to be able to have the opportunity to come on the program and, say happy holidays, everyone. So we're going to, the people closer to the end of the month, they'll be on sooner, and everyone in between, it'll be fun. But today we have our gaming correspondent, Mr. Cory Galliher, and today's show will be all about gaming, where we will be discussing everything from Pokemon Let's Go to Red Dead Redemption, a lot of the new games, and of course some other topics that are very similar. So, all right, so we have Cory waiting in the wings. He'll be joining us here in just a moment. But everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. Before we get started, first things first, ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from a link to our guest website to any articles that we talk about, any products that we discuss, any videos that we show. Anything and everything will be right there as we do it. Also, be sure to check out the live video stream, which you can also find at twitch.tv/ComputerAmerica, at ComputerAmerica, at any of the socials. And yeah, hey, of course, a lot more there. We just have 2 articles. We mentioned them yesterday. We should, of course, mention them today. They went up over the weekend. One about the current state of Bitcoin and how that is such a weird ride, because we covered a lot here on the show, or at least we have in the past. And I think it was a good time to get our thoughts together on that. And then the other one is a review for a particular backpack from Solo, New York. So all that and more, ComputerAmerica.com. Find it there. All right, so as I said before, Cory Galliher joining us all day on the show today as we talk all things video games. And this is one of our favorite segments, our Gamer Tuesday, and we can think of no one better to help us navigate these troubled waters. So, Cory, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So yeah, and obviously longtime listeners, I'm sure that they noticed that you were not on November, so we have a lot to discuss and a lot to catch up on. But over the past couple of weeks, how have you been? Doing well?
I've been pretty good. Just a bunch of the holiday stuff going on lately, so I've been busy with that. Not as much time to play video games as I'd like, but here I am.
Yeah, that is unfortunately the case as people grow older. And just a quick sidetrack, I will say that seems to be the determining factor as I get older. And of course, the ripe old age of 27, I am ancient. But as far as video games go, and seeing when I was a teenager and a younger kid, I thought that I was better at video games than all the adults in my life, and I thought, wow, it's just because kids are better at video games. But as I get older, and I hope for years and years to come, it's not even that it's like a physical limitation. It's not even like my reaction speeds are getting slower, and you might be able to speak to this with your video gaming, but it's not like my reaction speeds are getting slower. It's not like my decision making is getting any worse. It's just that when I was younger, I had more time to practice. And as I get older, I have less time to practice. I understand now that getting good at a video game is simply time and energy and effort showing through. And I don't know about you, but that seems to be, the determining factor on if I'm good or not.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. I mean, if we were playing video games based on doing your taxes, going to work, and adulting, I'd be great at those. But lately, maybe not everything else quite so much.
I think that's called The Sims. They do have that. Unfortunately, not as popular as it once was. But I digress. So everyone, Cory Galliher, he of course writes for Popzara, and he also writes for a couple of different publications, including the Cumberland Times-News, or has written for them, the Well-Read Mage, and of course of many others. And he is our resident gaming expert. Because over at Popzara, he does gaming reviews, and I can think of no better way to kick off today's show than with, obviously with Fallout 76 launching and Red Dead Redemption 2, you'd think that, one of those would be, in my mind, the biggest games. And don't get me wrong, one of those or, one of the other ones from this year are going to be Game of the Year. But Cory, if you don't mind, why don't we start with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee? Because that's, speaking of, being a kid and having more time for video games, this one kind of brought me right back. I've watched a lot and I've played I've played a bit, and I gotta say, I am so pleasantly surprised by what Pokemon has done with the genre, or at least with their franchise.
Absolutely. So if you don't play a lot of games, you don't follow the hobby, then you might not know about it. Pokemon Let's Go is basically the fully released version of the mobile game Pokemon Go, very popular back in 2016. There was a period there for about maybe the summer of 2016, where everybody and their mother was walking around playing Pokemon Go on their phones. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. I mean, you have to understand, when you talk about video games, this is still a hobby that a lot of people in the mainstream don't see as anything more than children's toys. Which, hey, maybe it's still true. As far as I know, it is. But the fact of the matter is that for a period there of about one summer in 2016, everybody was playing a video game. There was no shame. Maybe a little bit of shame. Everybody was doing it. It was great. It was beautiful. And now, I want to say last month, we had the release of Pokemon Let's Go, which is the console Switch version of Pokemon Go. Takes the Pokemon catching experience of throwing the Pokeball, catching the Pokemon, having it join your party, and so on and so forth, applies it to the Switch.
Mm-hmm. And just real quick, just to let everyone know, because I don't know how you kind of classify the Switch. For many, it's a mobile console. Obviously, you can pick it up and go, and you can also dock it and play on your television. It's kind of ambidextrous like that. But this would be, I think, in a lot of people's minds, the first time a Nintendo home console, of which there have been many, and the Pokemon franchise has been around for 20 years, but this is the first time that a Pokemon franchise has made it onto a home console. Is that how you kind of see this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a fantastic thing. It's kind of a way for people who are new to the series to get into Pokemon now that there's been like X number of generations of the game previously. And more importantly, I think this is a big deal. It's a revamp of the original take on Pokemon, of the first couple games, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. If you started with those games, it's entirely possible that you have kids now. Kids who might not have tried those first few games, this gives you a chance to show it off to them.
Definitely gives you a chance to show it off, and I think that's something that maybe longtime Pokemon fans, if you're listening, they would be pleasantly surprised about. Is that and you can speak to the art style because having actually played this, and you can speak to what is different core mechanic wise, not a play-by-play on how it's actually played, but talk about what's different in terms of Pokemon capturing, Pokemon battling, and also talk about kind of the art style, because it's Kanto, it's the original setting for Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Green, whatever, and at the same time they've I don't want to say revamped it, because it's really, really similar to the original, but they made it three-dimensional instead of course, pixelated, and made it look really, really cool. So talk about gameplay-wise, what's different, and did you like or hate that, and talk about art style-wise.
So we have had a fully 3D Pokemon in the main series game since I want to say a few years ago back with Pokemon X and Y. So that's nothing new. But what is new is the way that you deal with Pokemon in this game. If you're catching wild Pokemon, all you do is catch them. There is no combat. There is no battling. You throw Pokeballs. You catch the Pokemon. When you get them, they are yours. You can do what you will with them at that point. You can trade them back to the Professor for candy and so on. It's wonderful. It makes things very quick. You still get experience points for it. It takes a lot of the grinding out of the equation. Just basically streamlines the whole experience. Now, that's not to say there's no more battling. You still battle when you're fighting with trainers. You have your 6 Pokemon. They have their 6. You fight like however you used to. So that's pretty cool. The bottom line is that it really respects your time. You have a whole lot more focus on actually playing Pokemon more so than grinding against wild Pokemon, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and just real quick, I mean, there's also some very cool mechanics as far as, capturing, let's say, 100 of the same Pokemon. You'll actually more quickly, better than the randomized 1 in 8,000 chance of finding, let's say, a shiny Pokemon or something like that. There's actually core mechanics that you can get shiny Pokemon and things like that. I mean, there's depth here. Like, they've taken out a lot of the, as you said, grinding parts, but they've also put in a lot of, I don't want to say replayability, but they've added some depth to the game that wasn't there before.
Right. The bottom line is that they made the game a lot more accessible. Previously, you had 2 kinds of people playing Pokemon. They were basically your casual players who got to the story mode, maybe didn't play much after that, and you had your hardcore tournament players who learned everything about the ins and outs of Pokemon. That's what they focused on. This is kind of a way of introducing people to the more intricate side of Pokemon, of how to put it. 2 Pokemon that you capture will have better or worse stats than one another. And this game now allows you to see those stats. Just things like that. It's a really neat idea. Basically, it's a gateway to more advanced levels of Pokemon playing. Even if it seems like a more casual game, it's wonderful. It's honestly great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to say that, and actually, just real quick, the difference between Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee, these are the 2 Pokemon games are generally released with, either option A or B. The only difference is maybe Pokemon that you find within the game or, really not that much difference between the 2. Anything that you want to recommend about, either Pikachu or Eevee, or are both just as good as one another? What do you say?
Insofar as I can tell, they're about as good as one another. I've played Eevee myself because Eevee is adorable. But I've had friends playing Pikachu, and they also say it's great. So basically, whichever one you prefer.
Gotcha. And last thing that I want to mention about this, and then we'll move on to another topic. But talk about the little. Like, I kind of want to call it a dongle, but it's like the Pokemon Pro, Pokemon Go little Pokeball thing, where I think you can actually take Pokemon with you within the game, take them out. It has like a built-in pedometer. You experience, you gain levels as you take the Pokemon out with you. Obviously, it's just kind of a little tchotchke that Nintendo is very good at selling, but just using that instead of the Switch controllers. Anything special about that?
Ben, I will say it is the highlight of my Gamer Tuesday when you start talking about your dongle. It's fantastic.
It's a beautiful dongle.
But in terms of the Pokeball Plus, it is basically a miniature controller shaped like a Pokeball. It's got a little analog stick on top, and you can use that to play Pokemon Let's Go. It's got a gyroscope built into it, so you can actually act like you're throwing the Pokeball. Please don't actually throw it; you will break stuff. But It's a cool idea. It's a cool idea that's maybe not worth $50. You do get a Mew with it, which is a rare Pokemon. That's a neat idea. But it's pricey. If you really like Pokemon, it's not a bad idea. If you are short on money, maybe not so much.
I got you. So there's that. There's Pokemon Let's Go. And really, I wasn't expecting Nintendo to really do something like this with Pokemon. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it, but at the same time, to see them innovate the way that they did with Pokemon Let's Go, tying in with Pokemon Go, which you would think would be kind of a one-off, but no, Nintendo is definitely following success. It's definitely great to see, and I'm sure there will be updates to it, or adding additional Pokemon beyond the original 150. It's very, very cool to see. So that was that one. Awesome. Let's discuss. Let's see. So we have a couple others here. Pokemon Let's Go. It was a great game. A lot of people liked it. No, not a lot of people hating on it. So why don't we flip the coin, find something that people did hate on, and that they didn't like. And let's talk about Fallout 76. And last I heard, okay, so before we even get into the most recent update, Cory, if you wouldn't mind, give us a background on what happened with the Fallout 76 Power Armor Edition, i.e. the collector's edition of the game.
So Fallout 76 in general has been pretty controversial lately, at least insofar as, if you can believe that the hardcore gamer set makes anything controversial. The idea is that it's a multiplayer-focused Fallout game. So you've got your first-person exploration in a post-apocalyptic world, but there's other people in there with you. It's a different take in the series. There's no characters who aren't players, which is interesting. Any human you interact with is going to be another person behind the keyboard. Neat idea. In practice, it's got some problems. It's a little bit buggy. Bethesda games do tend to be. It's a completely untested idea. There's not a whole lot like it. So whether or not you like it or not, it's really up in the air. But we've got several points of contention with this. First off, it's been taking a beating from your hardcore gamer crowd. It is not popular to like this game right now. We'll go with that. Second off, we've been seeing some weirdness going on with the collector's editions of the game. Primarily, if you were to drop $200 on the big fancy collector's edition of Fallout 76, you were supposed to get a nice nylon bag.
You did. Canvas.
Either way, canvas, nylon. You were supposed to get a bag of some variety. Didn't work out that way.
Right, and really the big thing there was that you were supposed to get a canvas bag, but I believe that Fallout, or essentially Bethesda behind the scenes, after contacted by giving people nylon bags, nylon of course being much cheaper to produce than canvas, they had a particular screenshot of a communication between a player and one of the customer service reps that went viral, and it essentially said that making the canvas bag that was advertised with the collector's edition just couldn't be made. It was too expensive, couldn't be made, and we're not going to fix it. Sorry. That was the summation of their of their policy. But as you know, and I'm sure as a lot of people have seen if they've been following this, we saw a reversal on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've heard about people getting new bags and so on and so forth. Now, do I really? Yeah, I'm at a point. We talked about this earlier in the show where you get to a certain age and it's difficult to really follow video games as much as you used to. I have to be honest; it is difficult for me to really feel the outrage of not getting the appropriate bag with your $200 video game purchase ?
And honestly, there's I think two extremes to the spectrum here. The one on the kind of very young, this is the greatest, or this is the most egregious fault that's ever befallen upon me. They have a case here where they were promised canvas, they got nylon, and they feel cheated. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle who are probably like, wow, Bethesda, how dare you? Ben will remember this going forward, and they're going to move on with their lives. And then there was the other end of the spectrum, opposite of all the kids feeling hurt because it wasn't the same material, which is the legal side. Very expensive lawyers who are all chomping at the bit going, wow, that's blatant false advertising, and they admitted to it, and they said they're unremorseful. I can take them to court over this. That means that I believe if you put in a ticket, if you purchase the collector's edition, Bethesda has come out and said, send us your information, send us your proof of purchase, whatever, and by the end of January 31st, 2019, we will send you a replacement canvas bag, as in they're finally making them. I guess the backlash was bigger than any kind of savings they made by going with nylon. And that seems to be about the issue. And of course, gamers can hold a grudge like no one else. They are, or at least players of the game, they are going to hold on to this with a death grip, but they're going to rectify it, but only after being publicly shamed.
I mean, that's the thing with this kind of situation, though. One of the things you talk about is how gamers are really good at holding grudges. And that's true. I think the issue, and the reason that I couldn't really remember the details of this specific incident, is because there's been an incident, say, every every week it seems like. Every week it's something. Everything is a slap in the face. Every week it's something new. It's a giant outrage.
And I mean, just real quick, I will say that I play a lot of World of Warcraft. If you have been playing World of Warcraft for the past 2-3 months, ever since the new expansion, everyone was happy for a couple of weeks, and then over the past, I'd say 2 or 3 months, everyone was really angry. And I've noticed that about a lot of different, communities when it comes to online, that everyone's angry. You're right. It's gotten a lot more negative, where I don't even know if the average person is angrier, but I think that negativity goes much more viral than any kind of positive attitude.
Right, absolutely. I mean, we know this to be true because if you look back when YouTube was new, just starting out, wasn't the big popular thing that is today. One of the most popular shows was The Angry Video Game Nerd, and this was a guy who showed up on YouTube, made these pretty funny videos about how mad certain old terrible games made him, but he was obviously joking. Well, I think it was obvious anyway. And I think a lot of what we see today is people like taking this as gospel, as this game is quote unquote terrible, so I'm going to be furious about it. I'm going to raise a big stink. And that's kind of come to define gamers as a subculture, I guess. That kind of constant churning anger, impotent anger, largely. I mean, I think the only significant change I've seen from gamer anger might have been Battlefront 2, and I think that was more due to Disney being upset. But generally speaking, I mean, it's just a very negative subculture these days. People are very angry in general. Nothing really gets done as a result of that anger. It's just very... it's not pleasant.
I definitely have noticed that as well. It's just like social media in general, which we've been advocating for over the past couple of months here, is that just like social media, if you disconnect yourself from the machine, if you disconnect yourself from the environment that these things breed in, you'll actually find yourself enjoying games more. You'll find yourself, if you remove yourself from social media, you'll enjoy yourself more. It's just being surrounded by all these opinions, a lot of them dissenting. It's just unfortunate. And personally, I still enjoy X game, and even though I may see a lot of opinions saying that I shouldn't be enjoying myself, I still find myself doing exactly that. So if nothing else, we're going to switch off this conversation from Fallout 76. There are a couple of... actually, we're going to go from anger to anger. I think that actually might make some sense. But Fallout 76, they are replacing the bags, and hopefully not everyone is going to be turned off from the game, because the game, in general, it seems to be okay. It's just that the hardcore people really are not enjoying it. But hey, you can't please everyone all the time. Speaking of not being able to please everyone all the time, and like I said, this also a little bit of outrage. I'm not completely up to date on it myself, but I did want to bring it up where, in this case, Red Dead Redemption 2. Since you were last on, Cory, this game has dropped. We talked about it before it was released. It's, it was one of the most anticipated of the year, and the single player really, I think, to a lot of people, lived up to the hype. The single player was, something to really, really enjoy. But then came along the beta, where Rockstar, also makers of GTA, people may be more familiar with GTA Online, they wanted something along those veins, where people could create their own content, they could interact with one another. Long story short, Red Dead Redemption 2 launched their online beta. Not even full-blown service, but just a beta for the online service. And people have lost their cool, much like we were just talking about. They were complaining about the economy. They were complaining that they completely flipped this thing. They were complaining that the online the rewards weren't too much. It was a cash grab, so on and so forth. And I feel like two things. One, yes, very negative. People enjoy that. And two, I feel like the term beta doesn't mean beta anymore. People were very excited to get angry about that. So just real quick, anything you want to add about Red Dead Redemption 2 online? Anything about that?
So I haven't had the chance to play much of Red Dead Redemption 2's online. What I've heard is the controversy is based largely around the idea that stuff in the game costs a lot of in-game currency, and you don't really accumulate it all that quickly. And the reason that would upset people is because in Grand Theft Auto 5, you had your issue where that was the same problem. Things cost a lot in the online mode, but you could purchase these things called shark cards that would give you in-game money for real money. It's the microtransaction argument yet again. We've come back to this dozens of times. Every time, like, it feels like every time we do Gamer Tuesday, it's another microtransaction thing. So that's what we've got here once again. I mean, even if the microtransactions don't yet exist, that's what's happening. Certainly seems that way anyway. Generally speaking, again, having not played the online mode, I can only speak to the single player mode, but Red Dead Redemption 2, solid game, very slow, very depressing. You have to be in the right mood for it. Generally speaking, when I come home from work after 8 hours a day, I am not feeling like pretending to be a depressing cowboy in the sad old West. That's just not me.
Well, yeah, and that's what Red Dead was that you had a certain level of authenticity. If you wanted to spend 8 hours fishing, then guess what? They're going to totally give you the ability to sit there and fish, and it's going to be tedious. It's going to go through all the activities, and but yeah, so the online has problems. Red Dead 2, other than that opinion, honestly, I've seen a lot of positivity towards the game. There will be updates to the online version. I don't think I want to add anything else to that. I just want to say that, even with one of the most critically acclaimed games, and yes, there may be faults, and it's not wrong to point them out, but there's a proper way to do it, or at least there's a civil way to do it, and people sure as heck will find the uncivil way to do that. So, about 3-4 minutes left before the break here, so we can jump into another one. We've been talking a lot about games and lately dabbling in the culture. Let's talk about. All right, so I have two stories here, Corey. I sent them to you before the show. They kind of tie into each other, and it's the idea that I think Epic Games, EA tried it, with EA Origins, and I think a couple other publishers. I know Blizzard and Activision have been making their own as well, but this one has to do with Epic Games, and it has to do with the publisher, or at least the developer behind Stardew Valley, which is another amazing game. So let's start with the Epic Games one. Epic Games is going to launch its own store. So initial thoughts, before we even get into the details, but what do you think about Steam? Steam is losing its dominance, which we thought would be there forever. 95% of games sold digitally were through Steam. Epic Games, maker of Fortnite, is starting their own store. What do you think about that?
I think that Fortnite is the biggest game in the world. It remains that remains the case. I think if anybody's going to make a move on Steam's gigantic market share, it would be Epic Games at this point, with the biggest game in the market. And I think it is yet another Steam clone I'm going to have to run on my desktop whenever I want to play something, which is a little annoying. Not enough to outrage about, but a little annoying.
I think so too. I mean, it's certainly a big move. It's not unforeseen because Epic Games also did this with the iTunes Store. Would you think that a developer on iOS moving away from the Apple Store would be inconceivable? But then you see Fortnite able to do exactly that, and of course they do it for Android as well. Now they're doing it with the PC. They are really taking this giant crowbar of a game in Fortnite, and they're really saying, the traditional model, it works for a lot of people, but it definitely doesn't work for us because we are a monster. So here we go, and they just jam that crowbar between apps and the distribution method of those apps, and they seem happy with it. And I don't know if they can keep that up, because obviously this is all dependent on Fortnite. One game, we've seen trends up and down, but it's very interesting that maybe we are seeing the first steps that it's no longer a singular marketplace. It's no longer the Amazon of video games. It's now just going to be another retailer of video games. And I'm, of course, referring to Steam. Very interesting times that we live in.
And again, this is not something we haven't seen before. We've got currently, I'm at my desktop right now. I'm currently running EA's Origin, Ubisoft's Uplay. I'm running the Microsoft Xbox app. I am running the Bethesda.net game launcher to play Fallout 76 and the Elder Scrolls Online. I am running Steam. I am running Battle.net. I currently have 32 gigabytes of RAM. And right now, just talking to you. A very, very minimal amount of it. Maybe 10 gigabytes being used. Whatever. Point being, that's a lot of resources being used just for various flavors of Game Store. And the bottom line is, to me, who just plays games, I don't really care where the revenue stream goes or to whom it goes. I just want the game to run and to make it easy to get to.
That is why Steam was so dominant for such a long time, because before you had to go to you actually had to physically go to a store and pick up the CD with a CD key, and then you were able to go to one place, the Steam store, buy all of those in one spot. We're seeing a fracturing again, but hey, maybe people will get exhausted. But Cory, there's music in the background. Everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America, more Gamer Tuesday. Cory Galliher, Popzara magazine. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And everyone, if you missed any part of the show so far, it's been a very fun conversation with Cory Galliher from Popzara. And if you missed any part of it, computeramerica.com, we have a link to all the different podcasts, or you could just head straight out there to iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and more to find our show in its entirety rebroadcast as a podcast. Okay. So that being said, we're going to actually, there was one more story I wanted to tie in with, of course, with the idea that Epic Games launches its own store, as Cory so succinctly put it. To him, it really doesn't matter about who is actually distributing the game or who's publishing the game, as long as the game itself can be good. And that's why I think that this story is, pretty relevant, because the developer behind Stardew Valley, which very famously was a singular person for a long, long time, it was put up on Steam through Steam Greenlight, and it became a huge success. And then it was picked up by a publisher and, kind of became a more traditional game. But the developer behind the game, ConcernedApe, that's his handle, he just announced that they are splitting with their publisher, and he is heading back. I think he's working with 2 or 3 other people who were working with him in the beginning as well. Let's see. So he's splitting with his publisher Chucklefish, and he is now still working with I think like the Nintendo store, because you still have to, but otherwise he's a self-publisher. Anything that he wants to do in the game, any kind of content he wants to drop, any kind of work schedule he wants to have, anything goes as far as ConcernedApe wants to take it with his game. So if nothing else, Cory, what do you think about the fact that Stardew Valley and maybe taking some of the power away from the publisher in what can go into a game or how a game should be developed, and more, and sole creative control to a developer?
Ben, this is actually one of my favorite topics because I really started getting into looking into the industry and learning more about how games are made back around 2012 when the Kickstarter fad was getting big. And one of the things that really interests me is the idea that publishers are to blame when games aren't great or when developers have bad experiences or et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I'm going to repeat what I said about our last story. It is not any of my concern or the concern of other people where the money goes or how it's made by the people who make games. What matters to us is if the games are good or not. I think the question of who publishes who or who works with who, that's really more of it's a smokescreen. Bottom line, it's a smokescreen. Instead of talking about, whether Stardew Valley continues working with Chucklefish, the question is more, is Stardew Valley an enjoyable game? Yes, it is. Does having been published by Chucklefish make it less of an enjoyable game? No, it doesn't. And when it moves away from Chucklefish, will it be more enjoyable? Probably not. It'll be the same game. I think when we discuss things like publishers and indie developers and so on and so forth, I think a lot of what we talk about is we are trying to redirect criticism to an entity that can take it better. We talk about EA, for instance. With EA, we say that EA is a terrible company. It was the worst company in America 2 years in a row, if I recall correctly. You remember that, right?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Does that mean that EA cannot create good games, Ben?
No, they year after year, look at any sports game, they dominated the top 10 list with a bunch of different titles. They made a lot of objectively good games.
There you go. EA makes excellent games, but all we ever hear about is that EA is terrible. Contrast this with, say, CD Projekt Red, who made The Witcher 3, which I admit is a solid game. But does that mean that CD Projekt Red cannot make bad games?
Of course, just like you're saying, the development cycle is very complex, and you can't just pin it on one thing. You're absolutely right.
Right. So what it boils down to is whether or not what comes out of the industry, out of this gigantic meat grinder, is actually any fun to play or not. And every other aspect of this is kind of tangential. It's we can do some armchair analysis and talk about what games sell well and what publishers created those games and so on and so forth. But in the end, we really only have two choices that we can make. Do we purchase a game or do we not purchase it?
And of course, you're talking about the classic vote with your money if you really do.
Hardly even that. We can talk about voting with our money, but the fact of the matter is that those of us who care enough to listen to, say, a radio show about video games with an incredibly attractive commentator like myself, or even read your Reddits or read your Kotaku or read your Game Informer, that is an extremely minor percentage of the number of people who actually pay for video games. There is a reason that despite the entire hardcore gaming set saying Call of Duty is bad, that Call of Duty sells at the top of the charts every single year that it comes out. Basically, you can vote with your wallet, but your vote won't matter. Buy games that you think are fun and enjoyable, and that's about it.
Shrink your worldview and you'll be happier. I really
exactly.
do think I really do think that there's a comparison to be made there between social media and better mental health, where if you do less, I guess, the social media of video games, which is going onto these sites and things like that, and you stop listening for other people's opinions that validate your own opinion, hey, maybe you'll be happier just listening to yourself. I can definitely get behind that, and I've definitely noticed that. Like I said, over the past couple of years, I've seen it myself. Everything that has been wrong at Blizzard has been Activision's fault, and nothing has ever changed. It's just simply there's another person to pick on, or at least another thing to kind of throw a rock at. So I like what you're saying, and so this idea that Stardew Valley is splitting up with their publisher, like you said, it really doesn't matter. But I hope, if nothing else, it gives a little bit more creative freedom to to their director, where they can say, hey, I really feel like doing X, and he'll go out and do X. If, I'm not going to say that it's going to be a better game or worse game for doing this. I'm saying that if there's any kind of vision that he has for his game that he thinks can make it more enjoyable, I hope that doing this makes it more possible for him to do that faster. So that's all I got to say on that. Stardew Valley developer, expect updates. Think there's and they either did or just did or about to do multiplayer content for Stardew Valley. But I digress. There we go. Okay, Corey. Heading forward, let's. I'm actually feeling. I wanted to bring up the Nvidia Titan RTX, but at the same time, I don't think we talk a lot about hardware here on the show. Actually, let's dedicate the next 10 minutes or so to hardware. First, we'll do something that you brought up, which is the PlayStation Classic. That's a piece of hardware. And then we'll launch into the Nvidia Titan RTX, which is kind of on the other side of the spectrum. And the next couple minutes, let's talk hardware. PlayStation Classic, what's up with that? Why do you have an article here saying a bust ? What?
So the PlayStation Classic is the latest in a series, what's going to almost be a fad of micro consoles that basically re-release older retro games in a format that's workable with modern screens. So you've got your Super Nintendo Classic, you've got your NES Classic. I've got them sitting right here, actually. They're very nice systems. You didn't hear this from me. Very easy to hack them. Put whatever games you want on them. That is very delightful. I would definitely suggest purchasing one and doing exactly that. So
we here at Computer America do not advocate the use of emulators or downloading ROMs or any of these other keywords that you should totally not Google. But yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. Don't do any of that. That's all illegal. More importantly, Sony, both what I just mentioned are Nintendo consoles. And if you look at the NPD numbers, these things sell. People love these things. They sell. In as much as we can believe NPD numbers, they are selling delightfully. Mm-hmm. So, moving on from there, we've got Sony with the new PlayStation Classic. Now, several facets to the reception to the PlayStation Classic. First off, people are concerned about the selection of games on there. I don't know if I agree with that. It's got Final Fantasy VII. Really, what more could you want? Second off, people were upset that the PlayStation Classic runs these games through emulation, which is basically meaning that it's not the standard hardware. It's a computer pretending to be the hardware and running the games off of that, which, that's what the NES and SNES Classic do. They do the same thing. They're upset because in some cases the emulation isn't perfect. It's doing things like running games in the European video format, which, not ideal. And now we've discovered apparently that you can hook up a keyboard to this thing and fix the issues yourself if you want to.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk all around about it being a disappointment. So I can't.
And before you give your kind of final verdict here, I do want to say that we had a company on the show that made these kind of mini consoles, but it was like a little emulator kind of deal where they come out with like a super collection pack. You can buy them, at like drugstores and Walmart and things like that. Come out with like 20, 40, 50 games to a single, to the NES, to any other. Anyways, we talked with that company, and I will say it's a much more complex story than just simply coming out with something that can run all these classic games, because sometimes tracking down the original developers of the game, tracking down who actually has the rights to these video games, because the companies may be defunct. Maybe you actually have to find someone in the phone book of all things and call them up and say, hey, do you still have the paperwork for XYZ? It's very complicated. So for you to say, hey, you can plug in a keyboard and fix them yourself, anyone can do that, but maybe the people who had to legally sell these things, they literally were not allowed to, legally speaking. So, it's a very complex issue, and I hope that this review that you found here really takes that into consideration, because it's not just, hey, this couldn't be easier. Watch me do it in 10 minutes. It's like that's not a legally selling product,
Right, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to, I was just saying a little bit ago in the earlier part of the show that, gamers are outraged about literally everything these days, and it gets tiring. You get a little bit bored of following what we should consider a slap in the face from one week to the next. However, in this case, I will admit there are many, many, many options that you can go with that will give you a better experience than the PlayStation Classic for less money. If you are watching this stream on a computer, you can probably play some PlayStation games on there and get a better experience out of them than you would with the PlayStation Classic. And that's not what Sony should be going for. They should be going for, this is really convenient. I love this. It's so easy to play these games. How delightful.
Much like many other products that we've seen. Unfortunately, sometimes companies will literally approach Sony and they say, here is what we have. Here, just sign the dotted line here and we'll give you 30% of the revenue. Let us do what we're intending to do anyways. So I'm not saying that this is Sony's fault through and through, but Sony at some point signed off on this. So to hear you say that, I think you're right. Even if it is a cash grab, the least they could do is make it a polished, good-looking cash grab. So, okay. I can kind of understand that. And of course, for these things to be, for them to be a good representation of what games used to be, you definitely want to make sure that they're up to snuff, because you can really do a lot of harm to some classics. So there's that piece of hardware. Real quick, we'll mention some Nvidia Titan RTX, because we mentioned it yesterday on the show. I just like talking about it. It's a beast of a piece of hardware. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the specs, Corey, but just if nothing else, if no other spec catches your eye, what do you think about $2,500? What do you think about more than a lot of entire gaming PCs being dumped into a single graphics card?
A couple years ago, I was offered the chance by my management at my day job to work some overtime. And what it basically boiled down to is that for a few months, I would be working from 2 to 3 additional hours every morning, which meant I would wake up at about 3 in the morning, get into work about 4, work at my new quote-unquote job until about 7, then go to my actual job until the end of the day. And what did I do with this extra money that I got? I bought a Titan. I bought a Titan X Pascal.
Nice.
I want to say that ran me about $1,400, maybe more than that. I can't exactly recall what the price was. Yeah. It was nice. Don't get me wrong. It was a delightful product. I loved every second of it. It played every game I wanted just beautifully. It was great. Would I pay $2,500 for that experience again now that I have an RTX 2080? Hard to say because I was waking up pretty early at that point. But, these cards are not for your average consumer. These cards aren't like, I like video games. I'm going to buy this card. It'll be great. These cards are, I've paid this much for the top-of-the-line processor, top-of-the-line monitor, the very best peripherals I can get. Every part of my PC is as nice as it can get. This is what I do with my spare time, and it is worth it to me to pay this extra money to get the best of the best of the best. And toward that end, if you want the best of the best of the best, you will get it with a Titan. Don't get me wrong. You're just going to be paying for it.
Yeah, and that's really what, and really, I found this article from PC Gamer that had all the specs, and I will say that one of the commenters, I'm not sure how far down, when I was first finding the stories, you could find the comments, and, actually, it's, so one of the first ones on the page, but the comment boiled down to something like this, where what a lot of people don't understand about the Titan line of graphics cards, yes, they're going to be great for gaming. They are going to be, in terms of singular cards, they're going to be one of the best singular cards you can buy. But that's not really their entire purpose. As the commenter wrote, he said that if you look at, let's say, AutoCAD, and you look at the software for, doing AutoCAD, that Titan line of cards are approved, or, that they have the stamp of approval from these organizations to run very intensive rendering software. If you look at your 2080s, your 1080s, your TIs, whatever, they are not approved. They don't have the stamp of approval from these rendering softwares. Like they can do it, but they're not recommended. That's the thing. Is that Titan line of cards are meant for supercomputers. They're meant for workstations. They're meant for actually doing important things. And hey, also, they're also going to be really good for gaming. If you do gaming on the side, or if like you said, money is no option to you, it's going to be great. But it's not the entire market for these cards. Maybe, Corey, what you said earlier about, the people who go online and vent their frustration on, let's say, a subreddit, and they will, be really angry at a game. Maybe the people who are venting their frustration about Nvidia selling a $2,500 card, maybe they're not the entire market for a $2,500 card, and not everyone is actually mad about this.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you have the money and this is what you want to do with your money, then knock yourself out. It's fantastic.
And just real quick, I mean, just as Mr. Snowflakes in the chat room and many others have pointed out, you only get like a 30% increase over a 2080 Ti, an Nvidia RTX 2080 Ti. Double the price, 30% performance increase. Obviously, if you're looking for the price to performance kind of ratio, just go out and buy two 2080 Ti's if you want to spend the same amount of money and get much better, throughput. It's not even about performance at this point. Nvidia has a market in mind, and I think it's everyone else who's not really the intended market going, wow, Nvidia, you are crazy for selling something so high. AMD, save us from these extreme prices. It's not fair. AMD is trying their best to put out the best product they can. Nvidia is doing their best to put out a variety of products as best they can. They're not trying to milk anyone here.
So the last time I had an AMD card, I bought a Fury X off Newegg. It was so bad that I was able to convince Newegg to give me a refund and switch my card out when their policy explicitly states that they don't do that. So not going to support AMD, I'm afraid.
Well then, okay, so there's that argument. That we don't have time to get into the story behind that, but I will say, there you go, the Nvidia Titan RTX. I'm sure there'll be a Titan X RTX coming out here within the next year. That will be, if history is anything to say about it, another $500, so probably about $3,000. But there you go. Okay, so why don't we discuss really quick, because this is a personal passion of mine. Ever since I heard that Steven Spielberg was going to produce a Halo TV series directly from Microsoft, and it was going to be available through the Xbox Live, whole thing that they were trying to build out, and then that dropped off the face of the earth. I think the footage was used for like District 9 or something like that. Overall, the Halo, adapting Halo to anything other than a video game has been a complete bust. It's hard to hear about it because I love Halo so much. I think it has so much potential as has a great film. But here we go. Halo TV series production delayed as director Rupert Wyatt steps down. If nothing else, Corey, I wanted you to comment on the idea that Halo, is it ever going to make it to anything other than video games? And at this point, will it even make video games? Because that's getting delayed too.
I think if Assassin's Creed can do it, I think if Hitman can do it, I think if Tomb Raider can do it, I think if Doom can do it, I think Halo can do it. It just might take a while.
It just might take a while. I think you're right. So this article real quick, and then we'll move on to other things. But the article real quick essentially said that Showtime, they had ordered a complete Halo TV series. So much in the vein of, let's say, Game of Thrones, but instead of a book, they're adapting a video game. And Showtime was hoping that this would be a huge boon to their lineup. Well, there were some delays. They said they wanted to, quote unquote, do it right. Who knows what that means? Probably doublespeak for, we just didn't have the money. And the director stepped down. They have to look for a new director, but the whole thing is delayed once again, hopefully for not too long. But there you have it. So there's that one, Halo TV series on hold. Let's see. So what else do we have? We have, I think, how about this? Closing out the year in games. Let's talk about what's coming up, what's recent. We already mentioned things like Red Dead Redemption 2, Pokemon Let's Go. Talk about other standouts as far as video games, because Surprisingly, the end of the year, well, actually unsurprisingly, it's the holiday season. Everyone wants their title to be the best-selling holiday season title out there. But it's been a great time for video games. If you really like playing video games, November, December have been looking really, really good. So we have about 5 minutes left, Cory. Let's do any standouts to you and some brief overview of what the game is.
So, stuff that's coming out that you should probably take a look at. If you own a Nintendo Switch, you owe it to yourself to take a look at Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's got a ton of characters. It's got a ton of stages. It's going to be a great time if you got friends with you. It's got online play. I can see it just being a winner, straight up. Stuff that you may already have access to. I've been playing some Artifact, which is Valve's new card game with a friend of mine. It's not bad at all. Real easy to get new cards because you can buy them with real money, I guess. So that's pretty cool. Darksiders 3, very similar to Dark Souls. A lot of fun to play. Maybe not quite as posh as Dark Souls, but for what they're asking for right now, it's a solid game. I'm gonna go so far as to say that if you have some friends and you get in the right mindset, you will have a good time with Fallout 76, which is already on deep discount. So there's that.
Yeah.
Pretty solid. No complaints there. Other stuff that has come out this year, Hitman 2 is a solid game. Cool thing about that, if you have Hitman 1 and you buy Hitman 2, you can play the first game's levels in the second game's engine. Just a nice touch. Really like that kind of thing in games. Wish it happened more often. My vote for best multiplayer game this year, Lethal League Blaze. It's basically combat Pong. Definitely worth a look if you haven't tried that one yet.
I haven't seen that one.
It's not getting the attention that it should be, honestly. It's a really good time. You get some people together, play online, play local. Really solid game. Other stuff come out this year that was really good. Let's see. Monster Hunter World on PC, very, very fun. Bard's Tale 4, not a bad time for any of these old school RPGs. Mega Man 11, more Mega Man, no complaints there. Dead Cells fully released. If you're into roguelikes, platformers, excellent game. Let's see. That's my big ones. Just looking at what I've got currently. Ben, what do you think about this year?
This year in total, I mean, everything you just said, and there are a number of games that have been out for a while. I'm thinking Destiny, and actually Destiny 2 is coming out with a lot of new content. I think they're still teasing some of their, some of their next expansion that just launched. But that's my other main point, or that's the other point I wanted to make, was that if you enjoyed a game and it still has developers still pushing it, if you know that there's still content coming out for it, be it World of Warcraft, be it Destiny, be it just any of these other games that you maybe have played in the past and you wanted to revisit, I highly encourage that. Or maybe Rainbow Six Siege, just any of these games, because they only get better over time. Some in the chat room mentioned City Skylines, that there's a lot of replay there. Games that have been out for a while, go back and give them a try, because it's not just about what's new, but it's also about what feels new. So there you go. We're about out of time. Cory, if people want to find out more about you, your writings, what you're doing, I see that you just published, I don't know if it's you or someone at Popzara, just published your Darksiders 3 review. So what do you got going?
That was me. It's a pretty decent game. It's got some flaws, but it's worth looking at. Wanted to throw out one last game real quick before you get off the phone. Sure. If you played Sea of Thieves earlier this year, you really should take another look. It's updated. If I had to say a game of the year, I think Sea of Thieves probably in the running. It's a great time. Anyway, if you want to see where I write stuff, Popzara, Popzara.com. The Well-Read Mage, that's red as in the color. Right now, that's basically what I got.
Okay, no, and couldn't have said it better. Cory, this is the last time that you'll be on the show for the year, because, hey, December, next time you'll be joining us will be in January. I think that we are going to have some, some conflicts with it being the beginning of the year, but we'll get you on early next year. But in the meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you do, and thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Ben.
All right, have a great one. Bye-bye. All right, everyone, so there he goes, and of course, as we said, links to that in the show note at computeramerica.com, and yeah, hey, that was a lot of fun. Glad that we were able to get him on, and in the meantime, everyone, the music right there, means that we're about done for today. Thank you for joining us. As always, if you missed any part of today's show, check out the podcast, Computer America, wherever podcasts are heard, and on social media at Computer America. You can, of course, contact us there, get our ear, get our eye, and hey, if you have any kind of guests that you'd like on the show, or if you'd like any kind of segments or anything looked at, Computer America is there for you. We highly encourage you to reach out and hey, chat with us. We like to do that kind of thing. So, tomorrow on the program, I believe we have the one, the only, Mr. Mike Cermak. Always fun, and always enjoy talking with him. If you are interested in just general tech news and hey, really talking with a very interesting guy, you can, of course, tune in tomorrow. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. Computer America, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Everyone in the chat room, thank you for joining us there, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.